That's me and my wonderful ongoing guest, Scarlett Trillia. Today we're going to talk about Mars in Leo and Jupiter combust, as well as summertime and Pitta dosha. How are you today, Scarlett? I hear it's very hot in London.
It is hot and it is getting hotter. So we are right on track for this conversation.
Right. And I think in a podcast a while ago, we predicted record temperatures all over the globe for this summer.
Yep. It, it it's looking like that prediction might be coming true. It's sweaty here, and it's not even peaking out. That'll happen later this week. So, um, yeah, where to begin? Should we define what Pitta dosha means? Because I think we're going to say that word a lot.
Yeah, let's define Pitta dosha.
Or
Sure.
do we want to introduce? Do we want to ease in? I have a tendency to just go straight to it, but
I think let's go straight to it. I mean,
Let's just
our
go
themes today are Mars and Leo transit. So we want to break down what is Mars, what is Leo, and what is Pitta dosha. And so let's start there.
Okay, so we haven't talked a lot about the doshas. This is a concept that comes from the Ayurvedic part of this lineage, and we've been focused more on the Jyotish, on the astrology. So I'll give a little bit of context, and of course, you can always reach out and ask us questions. And of course, if you keep listening, all shall be revealed. So you don't need to know it all at once. But the general concept that we're referring to when we say Pitta dosha, we're talking about one of three um, what's the right English word to use in this context? It's like a constitution. Dosha actually means a defect, but the way of thinking about it is more constitutional in the sense that we're referring to the fire element and a few others. We're referring to the fire element as it manifests in different contexts. I hope I'm explaining this well. So Ayurveda has a 5-element theory. We have earth, we have water, we have fire, we have air, we have ether. That's 5. And they combine down into 3 doshas. And those are Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And we're focused on Pitta today because we're talking about Mars, a fire sign, fiery planet, excuse me. We're talking about Leo, a fire sign. And we're talking about a combustion, which is when a planet gets so close to the sun that it kind of burns up. So we're talking about heat and fire, which is what Pitta dosha's realm. There's a lot to explain. You don't have to know it. You don't have to know it all. But Pitta is related to summertime. It's related to heat. It's related to the digestive principle of Agni, which is another way of thinking about fire in action. We've talked about this on the podcast. There's a little bit of water in Pitta dosha that can be confusing, kind of like lava.
Well, in Pitta, in its natural form, is damp heat, a little bit of damp heat, as opposed to a dry heat, right? This is the tropics rather than the desert. Not too boggy and tropical, but not dried out like a desert when it is in its most balanced state.
That's how it feels.
But
in
we
London
can,
right now.
right, exactly.
It's
We can
humid.
see these, we can see in the Jyotish, we can see the 4 elements in the signs. And then the 5th element, which is ether, is not represented in the Jyotish chart because it is of the spirit in essence. So it's not represented in the same way that the other 4 elements are. And of course, we have fire signs that are represented in the chart. And here we have Mars, who is the planet of war and willpower and drive and aggression, entering into Leo, who is pride and performance and leadership and ego. And so Leo is naturally ruled by the sun, but the Mars feels very comfortable here in Leo. And Mars here will seek recognition and glory and will really want to be seen as heroic. So the big themes of Mars going into Leo will be creative courage and confrontational performance and righteous anger and really a protection of the pack energy. But we'll also see narcissism and power grabs and performative allyship and war theater and also ego tantrums as Mars goes into Leo. And we're really seeing all of that
On the global scale.
on the global scale. Yeah,
The
for
way I
sure.
like to think about it, so I think we've mentioned this in the past, of all the planets, Mars plays the role not just of kind of a soldier, but actually like a military general. And
That's
it's
right.
a general reporting to duty to the king who is the sun. So it's like well, actually, Mars has just come out of debilitation, right? So it's like someone was off duty and they
Yeah.
had to rest and recover from something, and now they are back and they are ready to load their guns. And
Yeah, for sure.
and show their king that they are a winning general. They're ready to win a fight. That's
And
that's
we
kind of the energy.
we really, unfortunately, I hate to be right in this case, we predicted war in the spring, and we are seeing this on many different global fronts. Like you and I sat down and we were like, yep, springtime, okay, World War III energy.
Hmm. And we need to be careful when we make predictions. Of course. And what we need to be protect our we need to be careful with the egos, Mars and Leo. We can't get too righteous about that. But really, this is just pattern recognition that we're
That's
doing.
right.
And we're saying this is a pattern that has been known to be related to these outcomes. We see the pattern. This kind of outcome is likely. Here it is. And I'm only bringing that up because I just wanted to remind us that several months ago we also said this looks a lot like a return of some sort of COVID type pandemic. Maybe not a lock-in like we experienced 5 years ago, but I just got really, really sick
Yes,
for
you
a
did.
couple of weeks, really sick. And now I'm hearing other people saying, there's a new strain. It's kind of coming back around. And we were anticipating this one for some reason as well. So I'm mostly just saying
Because
that
of
to
the
say-
Kalsarpa yoga.
Correct. So there's
Yeah.
an energy of maybe just having to stay home and recover from a longer term type of flu or sickness. Maybe having to stay home because of military activity in your geographic region, which is, we are in Kalsarpa Yoga now with Mars and Leo, and that might look a lot like being in a bunker for some people. And we know that that's happening around the world. Not to make this a dark podcast, but this is the world we live in, right?
Yeah.
And something that we've talked about that's also worth reiterating is we are not focused on just the good, the love, the light, because yoga is about coming to terms with all that is all at once, all the time, everywhere, right? And
That's
so not making space for things that are dark and difficult is like only acknowledging one part of the self, even though we're a whole being. So but yeah, we're kind of in an arrangement right now that is going to bring up some of the more difficult topics, and I think that's probably consistent with how people are feeling out there, especially ones that watch the news or live in
For
LA
sure.
or
For sure.
or Iran, or there's a lot of places you might
Yeah.
be where this is just unavoidable because it's right in your face, right? So
And at the same
Interestingly-
time,
oh.
yeah,
Yeah.
while we have Mars in Leo, which is this warrior in full regalia, really, this is military energy. We also have Jupiter being combust with the sun. And this happens whenever a planet gets very close with the sun's energy eclipses it and burns it out. And so when the sun outshines Jupiter, we really have like truth is scorched and ethics become invisible. And we get, this, we get the teacher who is teaching or wants to teach but can't be heard. So the warriors don't have wise counsel, right? And even there's lack of leadership in in protest movement, or there's lack of leadership in general.
Yeah. So just to give people even more perspective on this, because this is really important, I want to say two things about it. Combustion, what that looks like. So when we talk about astrology, we're basically using a language and a system of patterns to help us understand what is literally happening in the sky above us. So you
Correct.
could lay outside on the ground for 24 hours a day, and you will never see Jupiter, who is the guru is Jupiter's name, who is the sage advisor to the king. You will not see him in the sky because the king is in the way. The sun
That's right.
is so
The
close to
sun is
Jupiter
in the
that it is
way.
the sun is in the way. You cannot see that planet until the sun moves away from Jupiter. And so what that looks like in a room is like the king is in the war room right now. His general has been resting, has come in, Mike. The sun paying so much attention to him that he's got his blinders up. It's like his advisor is right behind him and he can't even see him, even though he's there and he's trying to say stuff. But it's like he's just it's just no one can see him actually. The king is just blocking him, and so
Yeah, the noble sage or
it's
like the
and it's
teacher is completely eclipsed by the general who's in the room.
and this is happening when Jupiter himself is residing in Nakshatra, in a star sign that is very intense. It's a
Correct.
electrical storm kind of placement. I don't want to distract us too much because we're trying to focus on fire right now. But Jupiter is in a place, Jupiter likes to expand things and is still expanding. We just can't see it because the sun is in the way. But it's expanding into very unstable energy at this exact moment. So it's like a
Correct.
storm is growing and brewing. We could see big storms, actually, summer type storms. With this, like big electrical storms, maybe even floods.
Or
Anyway,
like tornadoes, or,
tornadoes.
like really big, powerful electrical storms
Yeah.
could happen.
And there's another comment that I think we need to make. We're talking about Mars and Leo because that's a transit that just happened, and we've been foreshadowing this a little bit. But another fairly recent transit that we covered is Ketu is also in Leo. And Ketu has some of the same characteristics of Mars, but in a detached, kind of ancient, karmic way. But it's like the two most violent planets are in the King's war room together right now. And very interestingly, and Justine, I want to give you credit for pointing this out. Today is June 17th. 3 days ago in the United States, there were these massive organized protests around No King, right? And I didn't know this. I'm in the UK. It was the King's birthday. So it's the King's
Yes,
birthday.
it was
And
King Trump's birthday.
King Trump's birthday. But people were talking about it over here, and I was like, I'm obviously out of the loop. But a no king protest when Ketu, who is kind of means no, is in Leo, the king's house, is it's just, and this is all occurring with Mars in the Magha nakshatra. It's
Yes. And he also, tried to have a huge military parade for his birthday, which kind of didn't come off ended, and it didn't go as heads up. It didn't go as well as he wanted, and all of these things. And then everybody was protesting with this "No Kings" slogan, and it is so very much Ketu in Leo with Mars in Magha, and these hugely conflicting energy. So that's all going down.
That's all going down. I think musically, oh my gosh, you know what song just popped in my head? Sorry, I'm jumping around. The
Bring it.
song Cruel Summer.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. Um,
Yeah.
there's got to be a few, like Too Hot by the Specials. This town is too hot.
This
There's a
town is
lot of
too
good
hot.
ones. There's a lot of good
Yeah.
heat and summer.
It also has a lot to me it has a punk vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
like classic punk.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. Or even Bikini Kill. It could be
Okay.
some nice Bikini Kill.
Okay. Yeah, it's fast paced. Mars likes to go fast. Mars is the speed racer. And in the
Uh-huh.
body, remember that the planets are related to the energetic centers, the chakram inside the body.
Hmm.
Mars is in the why am I blanking?
Mars
Manipura
is in the navel
chakra is in
chakra,
the navel
navel,
chakra.
Mani,
Yeah.
Manipuri chakra. And it also, all the planets relate to the seven layers of the body, the Saptadhatus. Mars, interestingly, relates to the layer that is the nerve and the bone marrow. So
Mm.
it's very interesting. It's like, but think of it, a warrior needs nerves of steel to go and do what they are, what they have been hired or required to do, right? And protesting requires nerves of steel, especially if you're doing like even nonviolent protests, whatever type of protest. You need to have like your nerves and your nervous system together. It's actually Saturn is muscle because it's repetition, but
Mm-hmm.
Mars is the nervous system, and so we all want to watch our nervous systems right
Yeah.
now.
And interesting about the bone marrow. So Mars is
Hmm.
also often related to things like surgery and blood, and the bone
Yes.
marrow is like the it's kind of like this thick red
Yes.
like uh, oh yeah, you know what came to mind, it's, I mean, obviously it's like when you feel it in your bones,
Yes,
that
that's right.
that kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And just back to talking about the chakra system for one moment, the navel chakra is related. It's right on top of the stomach where we have Agni, our digestive fire, and it is related to pride and ego and achievement and accomplishment as well. And
Willpower.
if you really think about it, if you were going to get in a fight and you were trained as a martial artist, for
Hmm.
example, and you don't just like swing your arms and legs around, you engage your core and you kick and punch from the navel center. That's where
From the gut.
you gather your strength there and then you push it out through the extremities. And that's
Hmm.
exactly, Mars is very much a martial artist as well. In a more
Yes.
refined state, Mars
Hmm.
is capable of all of the peaceful martial arts too. You don't just always have to be fighting. Um,
And
also,
also interestingly, I just want to throw this out. Mars is the planet whose Shakti is most related to Kundalini awakening. And we find, like, in the imagery of Mars and Skanda, who is a god closely related to Mars, he rides a peacock, and then there's a serpent in the mouth of that peacock. And we find that, yogis have a true experience, an authentic, it's hard words are so hard, of Jupiter is combust, words are hard. Of Kundalini awakening, that a real verifiable Kundalini awakening is kind of rare in modern yogis, but we find in Kundalini awakening process that martial artists have it quite frequently, as well as soldiers in the heat of battle. There's so much adrenaline that's released that Kundalini Shakti begins to move, and then it's interrupted because of PTSD and because it's released in traumatic circumstances. And so Mars has this relationship to the sacred fire that awakens.
interesting. And this is even more abstract, but just to tie it all together. So think about a peacock, and each feather has the appearance of like an eye, right?
That's
And
right.
Pitta dosha can be seen in the eyes, the
Yeah.
clarity of the eyes, the strength of the stare,
Yep.
the
Mm-hmm.
color of the eyes. So even if you come from a race of people that doesn't have blue eyes, there will be a spectrum of brown, for example.
Yes.
So the lighter color eyes, whether it's blue or just the lighter brown, it doesn't matter. The piercing gaze, the intensity is all related to fire element. It's all related to third chakra, and it's all related to Mars. And so I just took a
And to
yoga class.
digestion, you
And
can
to digestion,
see
yeah.
someone's digestion and how well it's going through the sparkle in their eyes. And, people, as they age, their digestion weakens, and then they get issues with the eyes, glaucoma and other things. In Ayurveda, that's all related because Pitta dosha is transformation, it is digestion, and it is the ability to digest through the eyes all this input that comes in through the eyes and then is transformed by the optical nerve and the brain into meaningful data points.
Interesting. Another thing, just while we're here in the eye area, you never know what you're going to get with us, but you're going to get whatever. But this is also really interesting because when we are practicing Ayurveda, we assess the eyes, we assess patterns on the face, on the skin, we assess the tongue, we assess the pulses, etc. When you see eyes that have yellow discoloration in the whites, it is almost always related to heavy alcohol consumption, which is heat stagnating in the liver, which is also located in the area of the third chakra.
Exactly. And is ruled over by Mars, by Pitta dosha, and, increases heat in the body. In fact, in South India, they call alcohol the hot drinks because, it makes you hot and it makes you fiery and it makes you angry and it makes you all of these things if you take the hot drinks, in particular, like hard alcohol. Okay.
Okay. Sorry.
We've got to get back on track. So fashion. Let's talk.
Get back to the basics. I've got.
Yeah, come on, Mars.
Okay, all right, let's go. Okay, so it just got really hot in London, and typically England's not a very hot country, so you don't have loads of summer wear, and so I just pulled out a couple pairs of shorts, and the first thing I put on for this transit were like a tiny pair of like bright red like lifeguard shorts.
You did.
Yeah, of course, it's the only shorts I have that aren't like for going out. So I've been wearing like tiny red shorts. This is very much the energy of. This is a good fashion pick for this kind of moment.
It's a really good fashion pick for this.
Lifeguard shorts.
So for some reason, it just came through to me. I don't know why. Remember when Madonna started to wear those really pointy bra tops? I think it's coming through because they almost look like armor or like, like chest armor. So something like that on top.
Like the fembots in Austin Powers.
Yes. Exactly right. That's what I'm talking about.
That's what you're talking about. So what came through as you were saying that for me, it would be like Madonna or like Gwen Stefani, like that kind of celebrity persona wearing like military camo cargo pants with like a mesh tank top.
Totally.
To like with airflow and maybe a little bit, it's a little bit seductive, but they've got the baggy camo on. I mean, obviously camouflage and any sort of military, like, how there's trends of everybody wearing like green military jackets, sometimes with the stripe or the star or whatever. Like Che Guevara's hat that goes cycles through fashion trends. But also like anything that's kind of in like the gender neutral summertime clothing, like board short. I just saw someone wearing board shorts randomly in the city. Like, it's like, what are you doing?
Totally.
So we're in London. Just get those.
Anything gold, red, metallic, that would be all Leo coded Mars wear, something like that. And then, movie wise, I just have to throw out Gladiator, which I've never seen, but I think would be highly appropriate.
Yeah, something like that. Something with like a really strong, like an Arnold Schwarzenegger type main character. Terminator, lots of ammunition, kind of like excessively heroic. Like, I think at the end of True Lies, isn't he like hanging onto like a helicopter with like one hand?
Didn't see it, but that sounds right.
It's
like not just what are those cars? Too Fast, Too Furious. That's Mars in Aries, right?
Yeah.
Too fast, too furious. This is grandeur of
Mm-hmm.
the grandeur and spectacle of the fight. My great grandmother, who was Portuguese, and she would, whenever there was a big noise, like you know, like there was like some like a tree fell or there's some big noise, she would go, "Boom, crack Fourth of July." So that's the kind of.
Totally. The other
So
thing,
I always say that. I'm like, whoa, boom, crack Fourth of July.
I mean, this, as far as like action films go, it's definitely like the heroic main character who's protecting the entire world from nuclear fallout, and the bomb
Yes,
is,
that's
it's got
right.
29 minutes and it's counting down, and they've got to machine gun their way through like so much opposition, and then they'll turn it off at the last second and the bridge blows up. It's like that kind of and like
And then the car flips over.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
there's just
And
like
they,
explosion.
yeah, they save the whole world and nobody's the wiser, you know? It's like that. Um,
Totally.
what else we had? So we had fashion, definitely we got the
We've got to
fashion
do our
covered.
myth. So let me do our myth, and then we have to
Okay.
sign off because it's Mars in Leo with Jupiter combust, and we are doing it hot and heavy today.
Okay, quick, hot, quick, just bust it out. Myth it up.
So, once upon a time, long, long ago, far, far away, and simultaneously inside of each of us, right here and right now, Skanda, who is also known as Kartikeya, Murugan, Subramaniam, Sanmukha, he is not exactly Mars, but it's in the same constellation of deities. And he is divine fire made flesh. So he was born in unusual circumstances. Basically, the world was under siege by this demon called Tarkasura, who couldn't be defeated by any being except the son of Shiva. But Shiva was in one of his meditative retreats where he's going to meditate for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And while he's meditating, he's not getting busy with his wife and getting a son. So, to save the cosmos, the gods got Kamadeva, the god of desire, to shoot one of his arrows at Shiva's heart and to awaken him up. And at that moment, when Kamadeva, who's like a Vedic Cupid, I mean, he looks quite like a Cupid and he's got a bow and arrow of love. At that point, when Kamadeva shot his arrow into Shiva, Shiva ejaculated. But but he didn't come into a womb because he's meditating, but into a sacred fire. Oops. And the fire couldn't be contained by the earth because it's like fire plus Shiva, the great god of yoga, his sperm. And so even Agni, the fire god himself, was overwhelmed by the intensity of this sacred fire. And so they were, concerned that the fire was going to scavenge the earth. So they hand over the seed to the waters of Lake Saravana, where it takes form. And out of this lake, so out of this water, sacred fire into this lake, and out of this alchemical emergence, the fire of Skanda, this beautiful child of immense radiance, is born. So he is will plus purity plus fire plus dharma. He is the synthesis of Shiva's stillness and Shakti's movement. So, nobody was able to nurture this child because he's so hot and flame born. And so the gods gave Kritika to the Pleiades, the 6 sisters that we call the Pleiades. And these 6, which are the star sign of Kritika, which is a favored place, a very fiery place. And actually the myth of those Pleiades come into Vedic astrology and figure quite prominently. But we'll talk about that at some time. So the Pleiades, these mothers, raise Skanda in the mountains away from the corruption of the world. And Skanda absorbs this strength and leadership and courage. And he's called Kartikeya, the son of the Kritikas. And so when the time came, Skanda comes out of the mountains as a six-headed, 12-armed general riding his peacock and holding a divine spear. And he has six faces that face north and south and east and west and above and below, all six directions. So this is awareness in all directions. And he goes to battle with Tarkasura. And he slays Tarkasura with clarity, piercing through illusion and ego and delusion with his great spear. And so Skanda is Mars transmuted. This is fire with a cause and anger refined into action and power born out of purpose. And the Pleiades are this community of midwives. This is very beautiful. So the question is like, who is raising our warriors right now? And where is the feminine, in the training of our in essence, our freedom fighters in the struggle against fascism, right? And so this is the moment of choosing whether we fight with clarity or whether we burn in spectacle, which is coming right at us.
I love it. I had a lot of beautiful things come to mind as you were telling that myth.
Right.
One just kind of note for our listeners, many of whom are likely yoga practitioners or practitioners of yoga asana. Skandasana is a posture that we practice to relate to Skanda, and is obviously related somewhat to Mars as well. You can look it up, but it kind of looks like a karate move. Just reflecting
Yes,
back.
it does. It looks like it's very martial,
It's
and
very
it
martial.
and in that particular yogasana, we can really see the influence of Kalaripayattu, which is South Indian martial art form. Very, very beautiful martial art form where actually the martial artists worship Skanda and Murugan, who is very prominent in the pantheon of South India. So there you go. That's what we've got. Mars in Leo with Jupiter combust. Stay cool out there.
Stay cool. Keep your head cool.
Keep your head cool. Take some cilantro. Drink some cilantro juice. Eat some cilantro.
Cucumbers, watermelons,
Mhm.
fresh fruit in general, but particularly melon in the summer.
Stay peaceful on the streets.
Meditation is very
Meditation
good for
is a
this
good
time
idea.
I mean, we're gonna say that for literally every single thing, but it's really, really good for this one. I also, sorry, as you were telling the story about the bow and arrow and the shooting of,
Yeah.
of Hyuga, if you are looking for a soundtrack, you could just type in "Coming in Hot" and you'll get your pick of like maybe it's Peter Tosh or Lecrae, and but there's a lot of good songs. Anyway, sorry, excuse me. Just, I'm about to listen to one of those.
And so Mars is wanting to fight. Jupiter is silenced. The sun is craving glory. We have to look for that clear light spear of discernment that is in Skanda's hand, because Skanda is not just rage, because there's a lot to be upset about. He is sacred rage, guided with divine purpose, and his spear, his veil, it's called VEL veil, pierces through illusion. And we have to pierce that veil of propaganda and ego and confusion. So there you go.
There you go.
Srimatre Namaha, Om Namah Shivaya. We'll see you next week.
See you later.